7:01, we'll call the meeting to order. Mr. Board, would you like to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance?
I would love to. Pledge of allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Mr. Dowden is absent. All the board members are present. Mr. Board, has public notice been given?
Yes, it has.
Okay, we're going to move on then to the public hearing on new policies.
Okay, for those of you who maybe haven't seen new policies, when we have Neola policies, part of their resolutions, if they're adding, subtracting, or revising, that's kind of all included in their resolutions. But when we create policies like our governing culture policies or our operational expectation policies, our policies indicate that there's a process that we follow. And so we had our first reading of those policies at our last governance meeting on February 18th. And then according to our policy, we need to have a public hearing to give the public an opportunity to weigh in on any policies that are being proposed as a new policy. So that's what this agenda item is for. It's an opportunity for the public to do just that if they so choose. Ms. Carvey.
Thank you. I don't believe, unless Mr. Clerk, you're gonna also public comment.
No.
All right. Nobody else back there, so. All right, we'll move on then to the minutes. Is there a motion to approve the prior meeting minutes of February 18th, 2026? Motion made by Mr. Bailey. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Mrs. Thompson, any discussion? Mr. Bailey?
Aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Aye.
Aye. Yes. On to information, summary of discussions from February 18th, 2026.
Okay, so I have kind of taken out all of the discussion with the policies in the summary. You still obviously have access to them in board docs, but this is just a summary of what was captured for the February 18th. You're welcome to look it over, but as always, if there's something in there that you feel, because they are just summaries, they're not minutes that you feel are not reflected accurately, you can address it now or at a later date, and we'll get it the summary adjusted accordingly.
Give folks a couple minutes to go through it.
The AI summaries are pretty good when I upload the entire transcript, but again, it doesn't always catch everything.
Anything that needs any discussion? We will move on then. On to action, referendum change events.
Okay, there are two parts to this agenda item, all related to referendum and change events. We'll start with the easier of the two, and that is what is listed in your book, the top motion under the recommended action. There are two motions, and that's related to the 5 change events starting on page 12 and going through page 16. Okay. Typically, these would go to our ad hoc referendum committee, and they would approve these, and as long as they're unanimous, which they've always been, then they don't come to the board. However, because of the second part of this, and figuring that that second part was going to want full board discussion, it was just easier instead of getting that committee together to act on the one thing to just bring it all to this one. So that's what we've got here. We've got 5 change orders. They total a net change of about $25,000. I can point out some of the big things, and then I'll let Mr. Clerkin address any specific questions you might have. On page 13, the one dated 1/29/2026, you'll see a deduct there, a savings of 24,000, just shy of $25,000. That's a rebate that the vendors get through E-rate. And the E-rate is it's for specific purposes. It's a governmental program, and we get E-rate money. Vendors can also get E-rate money when they're doing work for us. So that's the rebate that we got on that. On page 15, you'll see another deduct just shy of 23,000. In the original scope here at the high school, one of the tech ed classrooms was going to get converted into a computer lab, and we were going to move the computer lab to that classroom. Some staffing has changed, and the ask is now just leave everything where it's at. Obviously, that's a savings to not move everything, and so that's what that deduct is for there. And then on the next page, page 16, you'll see an add of $40,000. This is an Alliant Energy requirement. Initially, when scopes were put together, the folks at Alliant Energy did not think that we were going to need to have this. But when it finally came through, the powers that be at Alliant said, yes, you have to do it. And therefore, we had to add the 40,000. Again, those are just some of the bigger items that are 20,000 or more one way or another. But Mr. Clerkin is here and can probably answer any of the specific questions if you've got them, and any of the other ones way better than I can.
Yes, the only question that I have is on the not making the change on those 2 rooms with tech ed and computer room. Is there any future need for to have that change done now when we have the people in place and have the finances available? Or is this something that with the staffing changes that we really don't need to make this adjustment?
Yeah, to be perfectly candid, I did not feel that it was a necessity to begin with. But it was something that we thought we could appease the staff that wanted it to just make it work. Since that staff member is no longer with us, really the need to make it is actually creating an inconvenience for the replacement. So
Thank you.
there is always the possibility, but I think once we have it set, that's just going to be where the computer lab is going to be.
Can you speak a little bit more to the purpose of the computer lab in that space? Like originally? Was it?
Yeah. Go ahead.
I just was related to a program.
Our computer lab in the tech ed is used mostly by our 7th and 8th grade tech ed teacher for graphics. But one of the prior tech ed teachers had wanted to get more into wasn't CAD, because they're doing CAD there. I'm drawing a blank on what the specific class that he was hoping to teach. And so we thought, the other teacher said, well, it's fine, we can walk down the hallway. But now that class isn't being taught because that person had a specific interest and certification in that area.
Makes sense.
Thank you. Mr. Board, I know, Mr. Clerk and whichever, I know there were some concerns with the stage area, and I see there's quite a few adjustments here. Will that take care of those concerns?
The stage area at the intermediate school?
No.
Or the
The
auditorium?
auditorium. I assumed that was some of the auditorium stuff.
I think, but Chris, jump in here. I believe that the stage items on here are the intermediate school, the removal of that stage in the cafeteria. Is that accurate?
I see it says high school with lights above stage.
Which page are you
Yeah, I
on?
don't see.
That's 12.
A lot of the stuff that's on here for the auditorium at the high school A lot of that is going through specs that were bid on and just making sure that what we are getting in that auditorium is gonna be usable.
Okay,
So some of this stuff is, we're eliminating a charge station on the stage for microphones, putting that up in the booth, just for use of it. There's no need to have a charge station on the stage. So a lot of this is just making sure that what we're getting is gonna be used for the right thing.
okay, thank you.
Yeah, I think I can add to that too. Chris, correct me if I'm wrong here, but initially, the lighting engineers had their specs, which were slightly different from the sound audio engineers. And therefore, the speakers that were put up by the audio engineers worked great and gave the best sound, but they hung just a little low, and some of the lights from the lighting engineer hit the speakers.
Okay,
And so I believe that 11,000 is to raise those speakers.
Would have been the 4,000, the one on the 129.
129.
CE 07.
Okay, so that's the one, the 4,000. That's to raise those speakers, and I believe that that's the concern you might be.
yeah,
thinking
that
about.
was, I know there were some questions there, I just looked like
Yeah.
that was being
Yeah.
addressed.
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
thank you.
Yeah, you bet.
On page 14, could you describe the high school, the IT rack upgrade? What's that entails?
I'm sure Chris is probably better suited than you.
Yeah, the current rack that's in there, didn't allow for enough space for all the additional servers and switches that are supposed to go in there. So this is almost double the size, for what we can fit into it. It just allows for more spacing, easier use if we have to add switches later. Basically it's mounted on the ground, instead of up on the wall, so it's about twice the size. So it's just convenience for the added switches that need to go in for the auditorium.
And then on page 16 for the intermediate schools, could you just describe what what a CT cabinet is that Alliant required us to install, what that really does for us? That'd be $40,000.
Be the 312, yeah, the last one you have there.
Yeah, that's the, I don't know specifics on that one. And like Steve had mentioned at the start with Alliant Energy when they first talked to them, this wasn't a requirement based upon the work that we were being done. And I think there was a different inspector that came out the second time, and based upon his review, it's a requirement from Alliant Energy for that.
So is it a capacity situation that it's like having too many extension cords plugged into a wall, or?
Honestly, your guess is as good as mine on that one. I don't know the exact details. We didn't get much out of Nexus with that one, so basically it's just Alliant Energy is requiring that upgrade.
Thank you.
It's a current transformer cabinet, so it's being an enclosure to house transformers and metering equipment. It's not required. According to Google, that's what it is.
It's probably close.
Perhaps something with arc flash or something. For safety.
I know we didn't have an option to do it, but I can't tell you exactly what. We would be, again, there's two motions there. This would just be that first one, if everyone is okay with the change orders, change events, I should say.
Questions, comments, concerns? Before we make a motion on this? Are we good to move forward? Is there a motion to approve the change events dated 1/15/2026 129, 2026, 218, 2026, 35, 2026, and 312, 2026, for a net change of $25,565.69.
I'll make the motion.
Should be made by Ms. Troxel, is there a second?
I'll second.
Mr. Sharp, any discussion? Mr. Sharp?
Aye.
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 Great.
Okay, and then the second part of that, and really what I thought would require the full board to weigh in on this is initially there was the plan to have an electric charging station at each of our three buildings, okay? Primary school, intermediate school, and high school. And that was added at the beginning, and the electric and everything was installed. We now have the one at the primary school, and again, Mr. Clerk can jump in here if I say something incorrectly. But upon trying to get it activated, we now realize that whether that is used or not, we will incur for all three of them an annual charge of $2,250, okay, for just having it there, all right? In addition, we would be paying for the electricity when people charge it, all right? Now, we do have the option to charge consumers for the electricity that they use. And we could make up that $2,250, maybe not right away, but in future years as electric vehicles become more prevalent. But upon Mr. Clerkin's investigation, the other charging ports in the city are free of charge. And so if we were to be the ones charging, that may look bad on us if the other ones are free. And if we continue to do it free, then we not only have the almost $2,300 cost annually, but then we're also paying for the power. Is that all accurate, Chris?
Yep.
Okay. So we have until the end of March to decide, and it's one of the reasons why we put it onto this one, so that if we need to gather more information, we can still get it on the 25th agenda and still make the decision by March. Nexus has given us really three options, and I'm sure that there's some sort of combination if we want it, but really three options. So if you look on page 10, option A would essentially leave the one at the primary school installed as is, don't touch it, but don't install one at the intermediate or the high school. And that would save us in the referendum scope almost $29,000. Now, we would still have the ongoing cost of $750
$750 per charging station.
per charging station, and we would still have to figure out, are we gonna charge people? And if so, what? At the primary school, but we would not have that compounded by 3, okay? Option B, on the top of page 11, is to move the charging station from the primary school to the high school, thinking that this is probably the spot where it would get used the most. We have students that drive and the most staff that drive. We wouldn't have to buy another one for here, we would simply move it. And so that cost would give us a savings of 19,000 and some change. And then option C would really be to just proceed as we originally planned, install one at the intermediate school, install one at the high school. We would have 3 of them. That's already included in the scope, so there's no additional charge, no pun intended. But we would have that ongoing cost of $2,250, and we would have to still decide at all 3 of them, what are we going to do from a, again, charging the consumers and what we would do. Mr. Clerk, did I miss anything that you want to add any of that? Because I know you did more work on it than I did.
No, that's everything that I got
Okay.
on that. So.
So, Mr. Rumbyhunt can probably give you a little bit more history than I can, but I do know that charging stations were pushed by a board member who's no longer here, and I don't know if that changes anything at all.
How many vehicles can charge at the same time per station? Is it 1 to 1? So 2 cars. Do we know what an average cost to charge a car is? Because I guess my concern is, we're trying to be fiscally responsible and we're reducing staff because we don't have finances. We're gonna give this away. I don't know how many vehicles would actually use it. If we pay $750 each year, that's still $750 that could be used elsewhere in budget. And if it ends up being that, hey, there's a lot of cars and it's charging nonstop, essentially, because if it's staff, they might be able to run out and move their vehicle and someone else can put theirs on or whatever. I guess the logistics, I have a hard time having it make sense. Just because when you're here, you're parked for hours on it. Before.
Yeah, they actually give you 3 options on, if we charge customers to use it. One of them is based on, you get the first 3 hours, 4 hours for free. After that 4th hour, it'd be $3 an hour. So it's kind of an incentive to move your vehicle after it's charged for so many hours. Some of them are more of, there's incentives with 3 different levels of charging the customer to encourage either moving or we're not worried, they can just sit there all day type of charging. So they're very detailed with kind of the purpose behind when you charge them for it.
Who manages that?
That
Who's
would be
responsible
through
for it?
ChargePoint.
Yeah,
I don't know the finances on that, if it goes directly to them and then it comes to us, or if that's handled by a financial institution.
They're likely a middleman.
I'd be curious to find out, like, if 2 cars charge, and let's say they go for 8 hours apiece, if they just let them sit on there, and they do that every day for a month, how much are we gonna incur in a cost for that? That, to me, seems like it's gonna get expensive.
I don't think that the community would be in favor of us spending taxpayer dollars that are meant for educating children on someone's gas.
Right.
I have a problem with that as well. I think a person should be responsible for paying for their own fuel source. I don't think that's the responsibility of the school district.
I agree. I agree with you.
So the one that's installed, if let's say we decide that we're not gonna do this, can we give that one back or?
It's a great question. Do you know the answer to that?
That I'm not sure. I would highly doubt it since it's already hooked up. Basically it's on, we're just waiting to the details in so people can use it. I would highly doubt that we can return it.
Can we shut it
We
off?
might be able to sell it
We could also do that
and
too.
recoup some of the cost. We could certainly just leave it sitting there and not do anything with it. I'm sure that that's an option. And then we wouldn't have the $750 annual cost. Or we can charge people money, and we don't care if the city's free. If they're gonna use our charging stations, then they pay for it. And the hope that you're not only recouping enough for the electricity, but you're recouping enough over the course of a year to pay for the charging station or stations. Because we don't have to be free. We don't have to, just let you know that there are options in the city.
Because the ones downtown, usually the same cars sit there all day long, day after day.
There's
Yeah,
one at
one
City
overnight.
Hall, there's one at the Aquatic
Auditorium.
Center,
Yeah.
And not one of
and at the auditorium.
And they're full, you're thinking?
They just, the same vehicles are there.
I've noticed that
There's
too.
just, they sit charged all day long.
Yeah.
And overnight, some of them. Yeah.
Here's my thought on if we have one, to have it here. Have it moved, because then for any events that happen, whether it's sporting events, things at the auditorium, whatever the case is, have visiting people instead of it just being students or faculty and staff using it. Have them be charge them to charge the vehicle. Cause if they need to charge, are they gonna drive downtown and then somehow try to figure out how to get back up here? The wrestling tournament on a Saturday. They can plug in and they then have an incentive to move their vehicle so that the next person would have the opportunity for it. So for me, it's either we bring it here and charge for it, or we don't have it. Because I think if we leave it standing, it looks worse than if we just take it out.
Again, Chris, correct me if I'm wrong here, but I believe that all of these options do, obviously the primary school is already wired, but the other two buildings, they are running the conduit. So, and preparing, but they're not actually putting one on there. So if 5 years down the road, these things are super popular and prices come down, we could still, run the wire and get them hooked up. And obviously at the primary school, if we remove it or move it, that would be super easy to do as well. Is that right, Chris?
So the wiring at the primary school would stay, it'd just be capped.
They would pull it back to the building so that, basically remove anything from the breaker to the actual station. Just so there's nothing that could cause an issue.
So if we have a wrestling event up here, like you said, and then somebody plugs in, somebody's visiting here and plugged in, how do we know to charge? I mean, how do we know who, does somebody have to monitor it, or how does that work?
It must self-monitor.
So if you're gonna use this charge point, car charger, you have to have an account through them. So it
Okay,
has to be set up, a credit card is entered into their account, and
Oh,
basically they
gotcha.
would reserve the spot. And then it would basically just work off the time and energy used for the charging.
okay, thanks, Chris.
So then, is that something that we would want to put on the website? So that,
Part of,
how do people know?
yeah,
where
part
to
of
find?
the, our account with ChargePoint would
Yeah.
be on like Google Maps, it would say, there's a charge point
Got
station
it.
here. So,
Got it, thank you. I don't know enough about stuff like that.
yeah, that was part of the initial setup that I went through with them. And then, we needed
Okay.
financial stuff on it, and that's when we found out about the additional charging.
Makes sense.
Do we know where those charging station locations would actually be on property? So where would that one be?
For here, I'm not 100% sure on that. I have to Google back on the map, but
Down by the softball concession stand. I don't know if it's on that side of the parking lot or before it goes to the hill, or if it's on the island, but it's one of those, down in that end on the student town. So near the event entrance.
So close enough to the other gym, in case somebody would, in case we're using that too for an event. It's fine. Makes sense.
So not to throw in another question into this, but like Brian said, people should be responsible for their own. Yes, and I think like how you said, having it here, whatever's going on. If someone's getting gas, they're gonna get gas before they come, or when they leave, not necessarily like, oh, well, I'll just charge while I'm. I don't know.
I think part of the problem is it depends on how far they're coming,
Yeah,
right? So if you're in an electric vehicle and you're driving a ways, you're gonna have to charge.
at some point, yeah.
Yeah,
You
I
just
don't
charge
disagree
where
with
wrestling.
having one up here and charging for it.
The other thought I just had is part of our safety of our students. So obviously that can be used by anybody.
That's one.
We have no control who
Yeah.
uses that. How do we, there's no way to guarantee safety of anybody at any time, so just thinking of that, if there's there's a child predator that's not supposed to be here anyway, but oh, hey, there's a charging station. And all of a sudden they pull in, they park, and they charge their car. Some concern with just the overall safety of,
Mhm.
and if it's a sporting event, if it happens to be the softball game going on and there's somebody sitting there, and depending on where it's located, if it's overlooking that field, it could be, I don't know, just
I hear
a little
you.
bit uneasy.
And that person could come and sit in the parking lot with the gas vehicle too, you know what I mean?
True.
I mean, but I do hear you, I mean, absolutely.
But I see how they could add the excuse of one charging my car versus.
But there's
Just
other
sitting
chargers
there.
in the community.
We could put a sign up there that during school hours, this charging station is only available to staff and students. And if we see somebody out there, we make sure that that's the case. It's a public event, like a softball team, that's on them to adhere to their core rules.
Yep.
If I remember back, Steve, I want to say that there was just one faculty member that had a car and was willing to pay for it, but going back to property and transportation and stuff, when we had those meetings, I was thinking there was only one
That's correct.
up here. Yeah.
At least one that has asked.
Yeah,
There
one that
may
had
be
ever
others
seen, yeah.
that haven't. But that person does have a commute, and so they do drive and then charge it up while they're teaching.
And are they here at the high school or are they? Yeah.
Alright, well, I'm hearing a couple different things here. We either try to recoup our costs on the one that we have by selling it, or see if they'll take it back, or option 2 is moving it up here and charging people to use it. That's what I'm hearing.
I guess the other option or the other issue is like, will it ever get used? If we charge for it, which if it doesn't get used, then we're paying $750 a year for something that's just sitting there. So I don't know what the public demand is on that. I don't know how likely it's going to be used to recover that $750 investment per year.
Yeah, I don't know either. I just don't know.
Yeah.
I guess the thought on that is if we go with option B, that quote unquote saves us 19,000, so whatever 750 goes into 19, that's how many years we would have free use of it. So I don't necessarily worry about if, I personally think we need to charge for it. Who knows, maybe the city will follow suit then and be able to do that and help the city budget. But just thinking that way, that whatever that math is, it's 20 years or whatever the math is, that that 750 is kind of prepaid. In there, that makes sense. John, does that make sense? My thinking on that? If we're not spending that 19,000 today, but.
If we don't spend it,
Right.
I would say it's much more likely we would probably move it somewhere else and we spend it on something different. Potentially.
Or we'd have to give it back to the community. So we can't just keep it.
Right. Well, even if that 19,000, then that keeps us from having to spend 750 on whatever that 19 covers. Whether it's deferred maintenance, whether it's spending money elsewhere. Then I think in the long run, it still end up being at least a wash if nothing else.
Chris, one more question. Does the company maintenance it? Who's responsible for the maintenance and upkeep?
I'm sure it has to be an approved technician to work on those EV chargers. Same thing with working on the EV cars themselves. There's probably going to be an improved list of people that can work on it. I haven't gone that far with the company yet to figure that out. But it's something I can definitely check in on.
So if a plow hit it or if somebody ran into it,
Yeah, more than likely, we would have to have, I mean,
Whatever.
Grounded Electric was the one that put it in. So more likely it's gonna be a call directly to them and.
Yeah.
But
I would entertain the idea to see if we could return it, and if we can't return it, and it's gotta be ours, then looking at moving it and charging. Or,
That's where my head's at.
yeah, I agree, but let's see if we can return.
Google says again. You can anticipate between $25 and $35 at the 35 cents per kilowatt hour, that we would generate $25 to $35 for a 4-hour charge. So if someone's here for 4 hours, that's about what their charge would be, $30 a year. So to do that, what? 25 times,
25 times. That's up
So
to
get to about 40 hours worth.
So could we see what, will they return it? How much will they return? And if not, I'm kind of leaning towards Tiffany's suggestion.
That money that you said. How much of that has to go back for electricity
but I was just gonna add that's,
before it?
I don't know how much it's gonna cost us for electricity, so if we collect $30, because somebody's out there for 4 hours, we might be adding $15 onto our electricity bill, and we're really only netting $15. So then you gotta multiply by that much more. I don't know the answer to that.
I'm not opposed to getting rid of it. Personally,
Yeah.
be done with it.
Let's try somewhere else.
And just to go with Tiffany's thought, just knowing when we've bought appliances that are returned, they don't charge full price for it, so if we would return it, I would be very surprised if we get anything more than probably 50% back on the cost of it. So what dollar does it? Yeah, return it, we'll take, yeah, we're okay with that amount of money versus, well, if we can't get 90% back, then we'll keep it and put it in use up here. Or do we just say, let's be done with it, if we can't return it, we'll try to move it or put it in storage until costs come down for the other ones or whatever the case is.
Again, we may be able to sell it.
Yeah.
Don't quote me on this, but I believe that the cost of the charger was like $7,200. So if we could recoup half of it, that's another $3,600 on top of the $28,894 that we would get in savings.
I think that's our first question. We got to find out what we can get back.
Does it matter? What if we can sell it for $500? Is that different than if we sell it for 4,000? Or is the board leaning towards get rid of it one way or another, and whatever we can get for it, we get for it?
I'm okay with that. I mean, maybe the city will buy it, put it somewhere else.
Yeah, and if they can buy it at a reduced fee, they might go for it, but yeah, I'd be willing to see if we could return it. If we can recoup 50-75% back out returning it or sell it, yeah.
Maybe we need to answer the question, do we want to have it, period? If we don't want it, then this whole conversation is kind of pointless. It's just get rid of it one way or the other, let's just not do it. But if we want to have it, then do we go ahead and don't we have to decide where we want to put it?
I guess we could look at is if we can't return it at all, then we look at selling it. If it doesn't sell and we just have to be stuck with it, then figure out that at that
Just
point,
figure it out then.
figure it out then.
How soon would we have to make a decision on installing, taking it out from the primary and putting it up here? If that, is there a time frame for services to be able to do the wiring and all of that?
Well, they're laying the conduit regardless, but I don't think we have to decide that by March. I think we could move it anytime because they're laying the conduit. It would just be whatever the cost of the wiring is. So I think it could sit at the primary school. We could see what I'm hearing is that we could see what we can get for it. And bring that back. Now, some of it's a little bit unknown. We sell it on Wisconsin surplus, an auction, so but maybe we can have these things sold,
You
and
could put a
it's-
reserve on those items. So
Sure.
If I could start with 6,000, just to try and recoup about 85% of it. And if it doesn't sell at that point, then drop or reserve for a second go with it.
Like that plan. Yeah, because I know you can do the reserves on it, so that if it doesn't go for that, then.
Yeah, like if someone bids
Drop it.
$6 on it, I'm not
Yep,
giving it to them for that.
no, yeah. Yeah.
Alright. So. I think we're good to move on this one then, right? So. We'll be looking for a motion to, well, it'd be under other
Well, I think it's option A,
or option
and
A.
then, right, we're just leaving it. We're not installing it anywhere else, we're not moving it at this point, and we're gonna see what we can get for it. Which doesn't necessarily have to be part of the motion, I mean.
Okay,
just
so we'll just move forward then with option A. Okay, is there a motion to approve the change event for electric charging stations as option A is presented?
I'll make that motion.
You have Mr. Miller in a second.
I'll second it.
Ms. Thompson, any discussion? Mr. Miller.
Aye.
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 Alright. And 5B, the new policy, governance culture, second reading. Striking through the board superintendent relations policies, because we did not get to those. So basically here. From our discussion at the last meeting, where we went through all the scenarios and the governance culture and policies. And how they applied. If everybody is fine with how they were presented, how they're written and such in that form, we can make a motion on this. If anybody feels that we need to go back and address any of them, then we will not make a motion on it and we'll move on to discussion. We can talk those through again. So I guess my question is, does anybody strongly feel that any of those need to go back to discussion?
There was one that I was looking at, but the more I read it, I was like, no, that's okay. So.
Did I miss anything?
Nope, can I add something?
Sure.
Actually, two things. One, don't read the motion in the book. You would want to, motion to approve GC 1 through GC 10 policies as presented. And then my second point would be, think about when you want this to be effective. Is it today, effective immediately? Is it July 1? Is it some other date? I don't know that we've really talked about when we want these to take hold, and then is it appropriate to have the GCs active without having the operational expectations and some of those active? Because the operational expectation is where you're going to define the guardrails, right? And so I don't want the board to have these general ones, without the guardrails set in place. So maybe it's May 1st and put some pressure on the board to get through them all. Maybe it's July 1st and just start with the fiscal year.
Does it need a specific date? Can we say on the completion of the operational? Just in case something happens where it's.
We could. But it's just to Mr. Board's point, it's good to have a determined time on there, just so that it ensures that we stay on track and get things done too. I think it's good to roll up a policy like this at the beginning of the next fiscal year, honestly. We might be in a position where we can roll all of them out July 1st, to be quite honest.
Yeah, I agree with that.
I think it'd just be cleaner to do July 1.
There's 9 of those GCs, right? I believe there's 9. Yeah.
9.
Is everybody good? Yeah. All right, is there a motion to approve policies GC 1 through GC 9 as presented effective July 1st, 2026?
I'll make the motion.
Motion made by Mr. Troxel, is there a second?
I'll second.
Second by Mr. Sharp. Any other discussion? Mrs. Thompson.
Aye.
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 I,
Aye.
Can you tell me who made that motion and seconded it?
I make the
Sheila and
motion.
Jeff.
No. Since they don't do that.
So we'll move on then to discussion. We will skip 6A. We just took action on that in the second reading. So we move on then to discussion on board superintendent relations policies.
All right, so it starts on page 30. The memo is the same. Each of the policies has the not official policy, but just things for the board to understand, to help understand or to ask questions of. So there's 5 BSRs, Board Superintendent Relation policies. Again, a lot of the details will be done in the operational expectation and results. But those are the 5, and I guess you can answer any questions about any of them, but I'll turn it back over to you, Mr. Mihan, and you can lead the discussion.
And I read the memo at the last meeting, just giving an overview of the folks in the room, but also the folks that watch this online. Do you all want me to read this memo? Okay. I'll read it. All right, so the background on this, over the past several months, the board has engaged in focused discussion regarding governance roles, responsibilities, and expectations within a coherent governance framework. These discussions were supported by governance materials, facilitated conversations, and shared review documents intended to surface common themes and areas of alignment. The attached governance culture, GC, and board superintendent relationship, BSR, policy drafts reflect that work. Policies are written at the governance level and are intended to clarify authority, accountability, and board discipline while reinforcing separation between governance and management that the board has discussed at length. So about these drafts, the GC and BSR policies are designed to define how the board governs and conducts its work as a collective body, clarify the relationship between the board and the superintendent, including delegation, accountability, and boundaries, establish shared expectations for professionalism, unity, and role clarity. Let's see, move on down to organization of the policies. During the board's governance discussions, topics related to board culture, board roles, and board superintendent relationship were often addressed together. This reflected the natural flow of conversation and the interconnected nature of those responsibilities. In drafting the policies, the governance framework separates governance culture, GC policies, from the board superintendent relationship, BSR policies, to provide greater clarity around authority, delegation, and accountability. The BSR policies are derived directly from the board's extensive discussion regarding trust, communication, role clarity, delegation, and superintendent accountability. While the board did not review these topics under a separate BSR heading during discussion, the substance of the BSR policies reflects themes that were discussed repeatedly throughout the governance meetings. The separation of these policies is intended to strengthen clarity and coherence, not to introduce new expectations or concepts. So with that, we will be doing the same format as before with some scenarios here. Just open discussion on this stuff. Any questions so far from folks? Yeah. So we have BSR scenario 1.
Yes.
I can't. Because this one's formatted differently than the last one, so I could do that. So BSR 1 is authority and accountability. The superintendent is the board's sole employee and is authorized to manage the operations of this district within the limits of board policy and the approved budget. Authority to act includes decision-making necessary to achieve board-defined results. So scenario 1, during a board meeting, a member turns to the marketing and communications director and says, maybe this is something we should put on Facebook. Carrie, can we do that? So what does this scenario reveal about how the board communicates with staff?
Single point of connection. One. Those individual board members shall not direct staff.
Yes. BSR 2 is single point of connection. The superintendent serves as the single point of connection between the board and district staff. All board direction to staff occurs through the superintendent. Individual board members shall not direct staff. So I can just ask a question. What would happen if staff responded to individual board members instead of the superintendent? Well, if you,
So then Terry would have to say, he comes to you on this.
well, it can blur the lines with that. You know, you no longer have that single point of contact.
Yeah, I think it's gonna be really important. I know that the perception of board members is that they're the new boss, right? Like, oh, you're my boss now. What? No. And so this really rings to that notion of the community of people and staff. And I have this idea that the board is the boss outside of their direct supervisors and superintendent and things like that. I think it's important that we are really clear about, no, you're not your boss.
What would the board want me to do if that starts happening? I mean, is that something, and nudge Aaron during a meeting? Is that something we let go and discuss it afterwards? Is that something like, how do we, I mean, because it's part of it, right? This is the relationship. So what happens when these things do happen? How do we address it without making a board member, publicly look like they've stepped out of line? But yet, did we try to keep that going?
I would think the discussion with the president would be the first step, and then he would take action accordingly. I think, if someone were stepping out of line. Probably, in my opinion.
Yeah, and ultimately, we all have to hold each other accountable too.
Yeah.
Really.
Yeah, I agree. I've seen, not necessarily with this board, but past boards and past superintendents, it happens so quickly, right? And it's so easy for a board member to ask somebody a question, and then that person want to be helpful, and then they're responding, and all of a sudden, before we've even gotten a chance to nudge somebody or somebody to correct it, it's happened. I realize you can't stop all of it, I guess, but this is one of the things we're gonna have to figure out is how do we want to address these things and when and how, or when and in what format?
I think we should just name it. Like, I think that we should just name it.
Call a spade a spade.
Just call it out. Not, I mean, not shaming, just say. I feel like that's a role of responsibility, or that is. It's not your job. I mean, honestly, that's what it is. It's not our job. I mean, if we step over the line, we gotta be. I don't know. I'm fine with it. Call me out. I mean, how are you gonna stop the behavior? It's not like we're. Unless somebody's really sensitive to that.
Well,
I respect that. I mean, honestly.
I guess if it was reversed, I would feel a little slighted if the board, scolded me in a public meeting.
Oh, I don't know if it's scolding or if it's just, can we just say, our new policies are. Our new policies, we need to adhere to our new policies, and I feel like we're crossing a line here on this one.
It's gonna be a learning curve.
I mean, it's gonna be
For
a
all of
change
us.
in behavior, and if it always has to go to Aaron, I don't think that's fair either.
Yeah, I just keep going back, even in earlier governance meetings, it's like we gotta hold one another accountable.
Yeah.
Like it's not any one person, it's all of us holding each other and ourselves accountable.
And the call out doesn't necessarily even have to be verbal. We all have paper and pens. If somebody did something, write a quick note, flip it to the person next to you and.
We all have a gavel.
Yeah, no, I mean, so I guess I feel like it doesn't even necessarily have to be
Yeah,
verbal, but.
I don't think it needs to be
Oh.
in a public setting for sure.
Yeah.
Like, there's a time and a place for that. That's what I would refer to as when you censure a board member because they're really unethical or
Yeah, I think
breaking
it's
laws
such a
and
problem.
policies and like, this isn't, in my mind, it doesn't warrant that type of shaming, I guess is the only way to put it. That's really what censoring is, it's publicly shaming somebody for their actions, And I don't think that this warrants anything like that.
No, I just think that we need to monitor one another so that when it happens, we can continue with the discussion.
Well, and I think too, we can develop tools to do this, It's been brought up before, with boards, self-evaluations or like post-meeting. Well, I can't remember what those folks called that, but after every meeting, they would, fill out this board document over, with different actions and summaries, and they use that as a tool to self-evaluate. Something that we can absolutely, and we should at some point consider doing.
And I agree with Joe as far as like with the self-assessment, we can't be so oversensitive to it, to where we're all adults. So, we get something like that, then we just.
I really think it's gonna happen more outside of this room. I think it's gonna be at a ball game or at a concert. And they have something to think of and you see somebody and you start talking to them and conversation all of a sudden shifts to them asking us or us asking them. So I think probably the having it happen here, I think we're gonna be more aware of it here than if we're just out in a social setting. And then it would be, I guess for me, what I would like to see is if word gets back to any of administration, especially you, that it's, hey Scott, we need to touch base on this. Want to make just this happen. This is what I heard. What's your side of the story? Just kind of have that you understand this is outside of your scope and outside of our governance policies and that type of thing. Just have it that way. I don't know if it necessarily needs to go through board president versus being quick one-on-one coaching conversations.
Yeah, I totally agree. You know, and the thing too is, the expectation's always been out there for our meetings, and one of the biggest reasons we moved our meetings to Wednesdays was to give folks more time to look at the agenda. If you have questions, to reach out to Mr. Board, have your questions answered, because if you prepare yourselves in those ways, number one, they're gonna cover the questions in the presentation. But two, if you come prepared and you already know the questions you're gonna ask, you can avoid the pitfall in a meeting setting where you might say something like the discipline reports comes to mind, where it seems like almost every other time when those come out, a board member will say, you know, it'd be nice to have this, and it'd be nice to have that, you know, like Liz Ryan can make that happen or whatever. You know, it's very, very easy to absolutely do what this scenario is saying in those settings. So, you know, it kind of comes full circle where the expectation is there, come prepared. And if there's something you would like to see, we just run it through the superintendent. You know, that's what we do. That's what any functional board would do. So that's my 2 cents on that.
You know, we're all human. This is a learning curve for us. We're gonna make mistakes. You know, we just learn from the mistake and move forward.
It is a struggle when you have these types of things, because, you know, there's that perception where you'll hear it all the time. Staff members are afraid to talk to board members about things. Well, number one, it shouldn't be in the first place. And we already have policies that exist that say that that's not appropriate behavior. So I get it. You know, you can be put in situations where the perception is that you don't care. You do care. There's a right and a wrong way to do things. Mr. Board, you got anything you wanna add to any of that, all that? Am I wrong?
No, you're not wrong at all. I just want to clarify that it is okay for, during a board meeting, I'm talking about, if, you know, Scott wants more information on XYZ, right? It is, but the way that he should do that is to not ask, would you say, Liz and Ryan, you know, that it would be to ask the board president, is it okay if we would get this? And then if the board president, you know, takes a vote and the majority of the board wants that information, then it's coming not from an individual board member, but it's being directed from the board as a whole, right? That can still happen in a board meeting, right? It doesn't have to be an action item that's listed under action. The board can take a vote on something, and then it might be a situation where it's like, okay, we'll work with that, and if it's a problem, we'll get back to you, and we may say, our software is not capable of doing that. This is going to take 15 hours, you know, to do. Is this something you really want? And then that's where the discussion then can happen. But it's perfectly okay for a board member to ask the board president to ask the board if that's something the board as a whole wants. What we're trying to avoid is the individuals asking other employees of the school district of something. Make sense?
Mhm.
Yeah, and that's a great point. It's something that has never been done while I've been on the board, and even all the meetings and stuff that I attended and watched in the past, it never happened either. So it's something that I forget about. So something we can absolutely do.
And maybe you can watch or listen for opportunities to coach us along that path when you're hearing our discussion.
Sure.
Like if you catch it before someone else, if you could just bring that up, that'd be helpful.
Because what might be important for one board member, it might not be important for their six. If you don't want to send this person on a wild goose chase doing something that six other people really don't see as relevant or, you know, so.
Yeah, I
It's
totally agree.
absolutely a good strategy.
Totally agree.
Good discussion. Any other discussion on this?
Carrie thinks we're gonna shun her.
Poor Carrie.
She's always the example.
Great.
I think Carrie's got enough ideas.
I apologize, scenario one is
Great job.
BSR two and scenario two is BSR one.
Yeah,
So they
it
didn't
threw me
quite line
off.
up, so.
Yeah, when Jill said BSR two, I'm like, we're on one.
It was a trick question. She got it right.
You decided to hurry up and read the second one too. Oh. All right, so scenario two. Scenario
345
two
are good.
is BSR one. BSR one is, I'll read it again, authority and accountability. The superintendent is the board's sole employee and is authorized to manage the operations of this district within the limits of board policy and the approved budget. Authority to act includes decision-making necessary to achieve board-defined results. So, scenario two, the superintendent closes school early due to weather. The storm does not occur. Board members express frustration that they were not consulted. So who has the authority to make this decision?
I'm glad it's not me.
Yeah, so I mean, referencing, you know, the policy is manage the operations of the district in the limits of the board policy. It's pretty black and white. I mean, and I can throw this out there, you know, what would happen if operational decisions required board consultation?
We'd all be up at 4:30 in the morning. I won't do that.
We're having up and down our driveways, wondering if we should call.
Oh, the big thing with that is timeliness. There are times things have to be decided now to try to get four people to say yes or no. On it, plus then you probably run into, open meeting law requirements and postings and all of that.
Well, we're going back to managing day to day, which is not what the coherence governance model is. It's that separation of duties and, you know, giving, you know, superintendent the guardrails, the expectations, and let them manage it.
So let's play devil advocate. What if we start closing school every time it's 20 degrees indoors? What the heck? What happens when there's repeated decisions that aren't really what the board's looking for? Maybe it's not 20, maybe it's every time it gets below 0, right? Instead of our negative 25 threshold or whatever it is, but what if it's just something the board just generally doesn't agree with?
I think we'd have to go back to our operational expectations and policies and review them and modify and change as needed. But it would take board approval, obviously. But, I mean, the purpose would be to set the guardrails. That's how I would interpret that.
Yeah, I think that any operational guardrails we put up, we'll have to address if there are repeated decisions that are being made by the superintendent that we feel are not good for the community, not good for the school, then there's a procedure on how we have a conversation around it.
Yeah, I would agree. I would hope that's what happens.
Mhm.
Okay, well, then let's talk about what the expectations are. And maybe the guardrails change.
Exactly.
Or maybe
Or
enforced.
clearly, yeah, or enforced, or more clearly defined to reflect what needs to happen.
More clearly defined, or even developed, because it may not even exist. But, this is gonna be a living, breathing thing for a long time. It's gonna be changing and adapting and growing and
And then at that point, if it's a board thing, it would be back on a motion for the agenda and adjust whatever. Guardrail be to adjust.
How are those decisions made now? Obviously, it's with a reasonable expectation that people are gonna maintain their health. That's why we close school on days that looks like it's potentially a hazard to health outside. But where does that come from now? Is that a singular decision, or is that something like you see different school districts closing around? Is there kind of a consortium of opinion that, yeah, it's probably a good idea to not have the kids on the road today, or staff?
Well, let me tell you, the last 3 years have been great because Mr. Bosworth makes that decision now, so. He can probably tell you with much greater detail on all the things that go in.
That's out of the bag, Miles.
To the decision. You can probably just give a quick overview.
Charlie Shortino Wednesday.
Everybody wakes up in the morning.
National Weather Service has great information. There's definitely communication between school districts, absolutely. And it's extremely rare that one school district will just make a decision on their own and not consult the other schools. That happened earlier in the year, I think. It's kind of a weird weather pattern, and one of our neighboring districts made a decision and nobody else did. And I called up the National Weather Service. I said, is this a realistic threat that they're saying? And they told me, no, this is not a threat. Not really sure why they did what they did. So, I mean, we'll consult experts like that when necessary, or often if multiple districts are thinking it's unsafe, we'll go with that same direction. Yeah. And just as far as decisions go, I mean, we'll go out and look at it ourselves very often. We'll talk with bus company at times, often call up our dispatcher and see what they're seeing. We talk with lots of people, including multiple school districts.
So very rarely is it just a singular decision. I mean, it's researched, obviously. And so in that scenario, somebody is calling out school because it's 0 degrees outside, and they're the anomaly in the area. Obviously, there's probably something to answer to eventually for that.
Sure, good point. Yeah.
We all good? All right. So BSR scenario 3. BSR 3 policy is delegation of authority. The board delegates to the superintendent the authority to implement and administer board policies and to make decisions necessary to achieve board-defined results consistent with applicable law and the approved budget. The superintendent may use any reasonable interpretation of board policy in carrying out these responsibilities. The board will respect that delegated authority and refrain from directing operational decisions except through formally adopted policy. So scenario 3 is the superintendent presents a framework for measuring outcomes. Board members begin revising methods and suggesting how data should be collected. So what is the appropriate boundary between board expectations and superintendent methods?
This is one that we talked about a lot, that we're not in the building. And it could be that we need to have someone thinking outside the box, because, well, we've always done it this way. Doesn't mean it's gonna give you the best result, if all of a sudden there's other thoughts that are going on that could be a better result. I don't know if anyone's familiar with Savannah Bananas baseball team, but they're playing fans first, and they do everything opposite of what's normal. And fans absolutely love it, so they're driven to it, and if we have the same kind of mindset and thought process, then maybe our kids are drawn to a different way of doing things, and it could take 3-5 years to get the results, to actually see that maybe move, but we give them the authority to run the building, run the faculty and staff, and get the best results for the students if it all ends up in the end. It's all above board and not breaking any laws or policy. Free reins.
Yeah, I mean, really, at the end of the day, in this scenario, you know, the board gave directive in the beginning. As far as superintendents presenting a framework for measuring outcomes, as a board, we set outcomes, expectations, right? Whether it's through strategic planning or just, you know, our normal day-to-day stuff. So if we, you know, in this scenario, you know, the superintendent may use any reasonable interpretation of board policy to achieve the board's expectations. That's really the foundation of this. And two, we're getting out of the, we don't do the house. You know, we say, Steve, take us to Miami. It's his job to figure out how we're gonna get there, not us. We can take a train, we can take a boat, we can take a car, an airplane, doesn't really matter, as long as we get to Miami. So, I guess that's how I kind of interpret this one as well.
I kind of feel like, in a way, in order for us to be able to champion the story, we have to know enough about it. You know what I mean? So board updates and things like that, hopefully will keep us apprised of the innovations that you're, you know, that you're setting up and supporting. But I think it's important that we can tell the story to some degree. And so hopefully during the operational components of this process, we can set some guidelines for ensuring that we have the information we need to champion the work that's being done.
I don't want to put words in your mouth, so if I misspoke, I need clarification, I guess, but you're saying, in the Miami example, we are not as board members going to determine how, but once you've established that we're gonna take a plane and we're gonna fly out of Milwaukee and we're gonna land in Orlando and then rent the car to get to Miami, we'd like to know that as a board, so that when we're approached, we have a general idea of where we're at. We don't need to necessarily know what seats we're in, we don't necessarily know the departure time, we just need to know generally what's going on.
Yeah.
Is that fair?
Yeah, that's exactly right.
And my hope is, yeah, I'm sure folks have already noticed, our open session meetings have gotten shorter. And as we start going through these things and adopting policies and the strategic planning set in motion, hopefully by the end of June, we can start filling some of the time in open session with exactly that type of stuff, you know, where we can, everybody can hear it, you know, not just us, but everybody can hear the hows and the whats and the things that we're doing that are very different from the normal day-to-day things that people are so used to hearing about in a board meeting. So I'm super excited for those days come, to be honest with you. I think it'll be fun for everybody. It'll be hopefully engaging, more engaging, and people might, the seats back there could be full every meeting. I don't know. because they're excited to hear what's going on. It's outside of snow plowing bids, you know, so.
Great.
Yeah, I think it's important, when evaluating the superintendent, that it remains focused on the results, right? And not the how, right? If the results are to get our, 10th grade reading scores up, even if the process was somewhat contentious and not how you liked it, if the end result is working, that I think that's what needs to be evaluated. Now, that doesn't mean that there can't be a discussion on, other things, but I think it's important for the board to make sure, because I need to know what I'm being evaluated on. And I think it needs to be, here's the outcomes. This is what we're hoping for. And that doesn't mean if, we're shooting for this and we fall just short of it, that's an epic failure, right? That doesn't mean that either. But I do think it needs to be focused on the results and not the how, even if it's not popular, right? I guess is maybe the best way.
Yeah, thanks for clarifying that. I should have said the hows more so. What are where are we at with outcomes? Because the danger with, getting into the, how things are being done, that's where, from our earlier discussion on our first scenario, that's where those things can really start applying, is people will be hard pressed not to say something like, oh, what about that? You think about this, so totally agree. Like the hows should not be part of the discussion, because the how will be the pitfall that will get all of us, second guessing.
Yeah.
What we're trying to do.
But I don't necessarily disagree with Jill, and what you said earlier, I think is accurate. I think it's still important for the board to be aware of the how. I think it's just important for them to not evaluate the how, right? And so if it is 10th grade reading scores, then we're up here. Brian and Liz are up here. We've established these are measuring sticks. This is what we're trying. And then 6 months from now, we're seeing some improvements in these areas. That's the report that would be given. That's the information that the board and the public would be getting on it. Is it working? Is it not working? This didn't work. We're going to try this. I think it's still important for you to know the how. I think it's just equally as important to not evaluate the how. That makes sense.
Yes. Yeah. Because there's always going to be some level of how.
Mhm.
There always will be. It's just, it can't all be the how. Good.
Yeah, I think that's great. I really feel like the confidence that we can portray to the public in what's going on and the achievement of students is going to be really, really important, that we can champion that and that we have some things to speak on. And so I totally agree.
Which not only keeps you informed, but it also creates a unity.
Yeah.
Right? It's just,
Absolutely.
we're all in this, right? We're all doing this.
And there are going to be opportunities to learn. And there's no way everything that a school district tries is going to work for all kids. It's not going to happen. But it's opportunities to learn, and that's okay.
Any other discussion on this?
The only thing I kind of chuckle with was that the evaluating the how was going back to taking us to Miami. We're gonna take a plane, we're not gonna evaluate you on, okay, is it Delta or American, that we're flying, you're gonna get us there.
Should see the plane I've got for you, 7.
It's gonna be a jet,
I
a
was
personal
thinking
jet.
this.
I'll get to that.
I used to have confidence in them.
You guys don't have to wear parachutes on this plane.
Get nervous.
All right. So BS BS4 scenario. So BS4 policy is monitoring and evaluation. The board monitors district performance and superintendent effectiveness through systematic review of progress toward board-defined results and compliance within board policies. Monitoring emphasizes evidence of progress, trends over time, and reasonable interpretations of board policy rather than isolated operational decisions or individual administrative actions. Monitoring provides meaningful information while preserving the superintendent's authority to manage operations. The board avoids using monitoring or evaluation as a means of directing day-to-day operations, reaffirming that accountability is strongest when authority and responsibility remain aligned. The superintendent's evaluation is based on district's performance and adherence to board expectations and emphasizes continuous improvement. So BS4 scenario, a board member requests frequent updates on individual discipline incidents. The superintendent begins providing detailed reports on individual cases. Is this the type of information the board should receive? Well, what happens if, the superintendent provides all requested details, it's, now we're back in the weeds in the operations in the day-to-day.
And being able to spend time to help correct whatever behaviors or if things on the right path, spending and wasting time putting information together we really don't need.
I think this one connects with communication and support too, because I think that's the board, the district administrator will keep us in the loop if there is something that we need to know about that is going on with any person in the school. Other than that, it's not a concern until it comes to us through communications. And then that manners probably discipline.
I think the term trends over time in that scenario is kind of what is most salient, micromanaging data, daily infractions is not really trends over time, so maybe it just happened to be a bad period of time.
How many incidents is there year to date? You guys know off the top of your head, ballpark?
I mean, what?
Like incidents, like our discipline, like our first, second, third, fourth quarter discipline reports. How many incidents in total is there?
Ask me tomorrow when I prepare for the
Over
quarter
1,000?
discipline report. I don't think so. I don't think so.
But even if it's like, let's just say 500, is that a good use of anybody's time to do 500 individual reports, even if it's the same student for 100 of those times, it's still 100 incidents that you're reporting on. It's not a good use of anybody's time to do that, in my opinion. But going back to this policy, it's, we're definitely back to that day-to-day stuff.
Add two things. One, I think it's my job, and when I say mine, and not just mine, but our administrative team's job to make sure that we're giving the board meaningful information, right, at a governance level, not the individual things. I think that's one. Two, this is probably one of the policies that concerns me as a superintendent the most, not with the folks in this room, but 5 years from now, 7 years from now, when things change, whether it's me or someone else in this role, and whether it's you or someone else in those seats, to not have clearly defined expectations, because the moment we lose clearly defined expectations, it becomes very, very difficult to evaluate someone. This year, it should happen organically, right? Because we're gonna have a group of community members telling us what they want this to be, and the steering committee making a recommendation to the board. This is what we want our school district to be, and I just envision the board wholeheartedly adopting those recommendations from all the hard work that the steering committee does. As those things morph and change over time, and you're kind of in between strategic planning sessions, or even if, it's not every 5 years, it turns into 7 years and board members change, that's where I think the evaluation becomes tough. When there isn't clearly defined expectations, it becomes more of we just need to do better, right? And what is better, right? Those kinds of things. And then it's back to the old way of evaluating people on, well, we really didn't like the decisions you made regarding putting that teacher on an improvement plan, or we didn't like the decisions you made because we're canceling school when, there was no snow, like all of the little micromanagement stuff. Again, I'm not worried about this board. I'm just worried about the Constitution written, and how do we make sure that as we pass the torch from one board member to the next and part of onboarding, that we continue to always focus on the clear expectations. Here's our top priorities, and then the evaluation reflects that. So, just comment.
Yes, and that's, I think I mentioned it a couple of times in these meetings. I really want us to get a good evaluation framework. Either we can build something, or like I said, at the state convention, WASB completely redid their evaluation tool as well. It's something that we can absolutely consider using. However, we're still going to have some level of homegrown stuff based on exactly what you're saying. So either way, it's something that we're definitely going to have to look at adopting probably sometime this summer, I would think, to get the wheels in motion and getting that done.
Because we don't want a board to just plan on Miami to say, well, take us on vacation and then evaluate the superintendent because you didn't like the destination, right? The board's job is to say, we want to go to Miami, figure out how to get us there, right? That's, I'm growing into a little bit large analogy, but that's the idea, right? It has to be specific enough to be able for somebody to be able to actually do it. And then you evaluate, did we get there? Did we get there safely? Was it good? Yes. Okay. And that's the evaluation. So.
I'd rather go to Key West.
Me too.
Then you're my enemy.
Oh, boy. All right. Are we? And that went. So, okay. Final one, BSR 5. So the BSR 5 policy is communication and support. The board and superintendent shall maintain open, professional, and respectful communication that supports effective governance and district leadership. The board will provide the superintendent with clear expectations, timely feedback, and appropriate resources necessary to fulfill responsibilities. The superintendent will ensure the board receives accurate and sufficient information to carry out its governance role. The superintendent will keep the board informed in a timely and transparent manner consistent with board policy. BSR 5 scenario. The superintendent shares at a community event that the district is exploring the possibility of starting an alternative program. Several board members hear about it from the community and express frustration that they were not informed beforehand. Is the one sentence in there that stands out, then is the superintendent is the board's sole employee and is authorized to manage the operations of the BSR 1.
Yeah. Give you a cheat sheet on that one. You have to figure that one out on your own.
Yes, in the final sentence there, the superintendent will keep the board informed in a timely and transparent manner consistent with board policy, so. I guess, I'm sure under most circumstances that process would go through the board first, but if it didn't, I could see there might be some contention there, if it just put out in the public before it's established at the board level. So it's an issue.
There is a specific operational expectation policy. I think it's number 7, if you got a chance to look at it, that talks a little bit more in depth about communication and what, what constitutes timeliness, what constitutes, caught off guard, what constitutes something that a reasonable board, I think that's the wording of it, something that a reasonable board would find controversial, right? Because controversy, those kinds of things, the board wants to be aware of, right? If even though, an example doesn't come to mind right off the top of my head, but let's just say there's a piece of curriculum, right, that is controversial, right? The board needs to know about that before this happens, if at all possible, right? Now, sometimes, I'm caught off guard too, and so we have to understand that. But if we know something's gonna happen and we know something's gonna be controversial or has a likelihood of it, I think the board would expect me to give them a heads up in a timely manner, even if it is a little bit about the how. I think that's where some of the communication has to come in.
Since you referenced it, one of them in the operational expectations, the superintendent shall not allow the board to learn of significant district matters from external sources before being informed for appropriate administrative communication. Another one is matters of reasonable governing body we expect to know due to their potential to become publicly controversial, legal significant, financially impactful. So,
The number 7.
yeah. And just going back to the BSR 5, that very first sentence is open, professional, and respectful communication. I don't think either one of our administrators that are here want to be blindsided in any kind of public forum. Oh yeah, I hear that you're not gonna be back next year. What? Same kind of thing. Not that it's happening. I don't have that thought.
And honestly, this is a two-way street. If we hear things, we should be letting him know. So he's not blindsided as well, I look at it as, back to holding ourselves accountable. Well, this is another way. We can't expect communications to be one way when it should be 2 ways. Something to think about.
Great point. Something I think this board has done a really good job of. I mean, like, hey, you should know about this. If you don't, because sometimes I don't.
Yeah, I think we've definitely done a great job on it. I just wanted to throw that out there as it's two-way street for this, for communication, for sure.
And I would emphasize, I don't ever want the board to think that making somebody aware of something is the same as meddling in the how, right? That's just courtesy, right? You know about something, somebody's upset or, I think that, and the same as you would, right? You want to know about that if it's at all possible. So I've always appreciated that when folks have said like, hey, I'm not a social media person, so if something's on social media that's really gaining traction, more than 25 people, right? Something I should know about, right? Carrie's great attitude, but you know what I mean?
She would keep us informed.
Well, I will say I was a little taken back when I walked into Quick Trip and we were taking home assignments. On the front page.
We all were.
I'm like, I missed that meeting.
Like people versus.
Yeah, that conversation for a different day.
Yeah.
All right, we good on that? Okay, so the next couple scenarios is just, it applies to all different BSRs, so we can just go through these quick. So BSR scenario 6, the board directs the superintendent to achieve budget neutrality. The superintendent proposes eliminating several popular programs and proceeds with planning reductions that generate significant community concern before returning to the board. So this one applies to BSR 1, authority and accountability. BSR 3, delegation of authority, and BSR 5, communication support to the board. But in this scenario, where did the board responsibility end and the superintendent's responsibility begin?
Responsibility of the board is to set the guardrails then. I mean, budget neutral, but these things we need to, if this happens to impact it, we need to know prior to coming to public knowledge or any action taken on it. If there's popular programs, as the scenario suggests, that we don't want to have touched or want it to be on a different level of financial scrutiny, then we need to establish that at the very beginning.
I think BSR 5 too, mentioning that, just maintaining open channel of communication before those programs are eliminated. I think that board needs to be aware of that as well, to ensure accurate and sufficient information to carry forward its governing role. So, I mean, eliminating programs is quite a big issue.
I mean, just taking out of that is having those communications in closed session ahead of becoming public information. Just thinking back to the, when the county was looking at cutting the sheriff's department. So those conversations, I feel, should have probably happened in closed session instead of becoming big, huge public kerfuffle. That makes sense. It's communication. Making sure that we set the expectation of what's off, what might be off limits versus just, if we take out this one program that makes it budget neutral, let's get rid of it. Whatever that one program is, whether it's academics or if it's co-curriculars, athletics, whatever.
Any other discussion on scenario 6? Okay. Move on to our last one, scenario 7. So scenario 7 applies to BSR 5, the communication and support to the board. A situation occurs at a school that generates significant concern among staff and parents. The superintendent handles the situation appropriately, but does not inform the board. Board members later hear about it from others and feel blindsided. So what would the board expect to be communicated to us in this situation?
Well, if it's something major, we go back to that communication, that's important for us to know. Because, I mean, the public is gonna instantly reach out to us if it's something, major. I mean, communication is always the key to everything.
Keep doing what you're doing, support. I appreciate it. Communication's already there on those things.
I was thinking the same thing. You're right down.
Mhm.
We set the guardrails again in the operational expectations. And I know that we're not there yet, but I think these all kind of tie together. It's gonna be important to try to figure out and try to define what is, I mean, because it clearly says in this scenario, significant, right? Or that's what you said. So we know this is a big deal, right? It's what does Jill think is significant compared to what does Scott think is significant compared to what does the board think is significant, and trying to find the right wording to make that so that again, I understand what the expectations are and you get what is expected, right? Have a precursor again to that number 7, because those are things we're gonna have to figure out, you know? Which is why I think I use the word reasonable board, right? This is a reasonable board, but it is a board, right? It's not an individual. And just like, you know, the board shouldn't direct other employees, I think it's important that the board doesn't take on their own significance agendas, and I mean, an individual doesn't, but the board instead defines what that is. It's just, there's gonna be situations, right, that I didn't handle properly, you didn't explain properly, and it's just, we just gotta continually, as somebody said, a living document, we just gotta continue to talk about it, like, okay, this happens again, let's do it this way, or, here's what I was thinking, well, here's what I was thinking, like, those, I think those are just conversations we just have to have continually as we get through this.
Yeah, the process in general should make it much more engaging.
One of the things that I want to try to ask Mr. Strang is, because now that we've got these once a month governance meetings, right? And so we can talk about, you know, obviously right now we're focused on developing policies, but as we get into, you know, application and real life, is under what state statutes that allow us to go into closed, can we legally talk about how some of the things played out, right? Like this happened. How does this relate to our policy so that we can change our policy or clearly define our policy and be able to do some of that in closed, like you're talking about, without violating the reasons you can go into closed, right? Because we were way over here. We were going into closed for things that was clearly outside of our scope, you know, several years ago. Now we're in a good spot, but we still got to be able to talk about some of this stuff. So I'm hoping he can come up with a way to be able to do some of that and talk through some of those things in a setting where it's just the, you know, a limited people without the entire world being able to hear about the situation.
Back to performance evaluation.
I mean, that might be what he ends up discussing or how he ends up working it, but I think those will be good. We've done that a little bit with expulsions, right? We've had kind of a debrief, right? And so as we have some of these other things, this would be good to be able to, if allowable, to go into closed and just talk through some of them, even if they're light examples. Yep, that was handled well. There's no controversy. Let's just clarify. We liked it. It was too much information, maybe, whatever, right? I just think that would be
Yeah,
good.
and I think those opportunities too are good opportunities to inform guidelines, form protocols and procedures, processes. No,
Mhm.
what went well? What did we do? Let's get discreet. And it might help us form some type of procedure that we can repeat, right? In stickier situations, that might help us become a little clearer.
If situations arise, you can see us developing, having a debrief, talking through the outcomes and, you know, either developing new policies or revising old ones. I think it's great, you know. It's a living, breathing document that's gonna always have to be evaluated, looked at.
Mhm.
And as situations come up, it's a great time to do that.
And I think it's important that we intentionally do that,
Mhm.
Because the last thing that I want is for board members or a board as a whole to be upset with somehow something was handled, even if it was small, but then that festers. And truthfully, the last thing that a board wants is for their superintendent to be looking for another job because, we just didn't talk through things, right? Again, I'm not talking immediately right now, but you know what I'm talking about. It's just, nobody wants that. Let's handle it upfront when it's little or likely little, and not allow it to fester. I just think that'll be really important that we intentionally try to do some of those exercises from time to time.
Yeah, and two, if we don't do that, we can all become pretty complacent. Within 18 months, all the work that we did is just, it's just one of the things we did, but we never really followed through on it. And so,
Because it's easy to say we're gonna live in this world, right, until crap hits the fan, and then it doesn't look so good, right? And so we've got to be able to talk through this stuff when it does hit the fan, and before it hits the fan, and after it hits the fan, and just continually grow. And I think that's the key. This is the right people to do it. I mean, that's considered.
all right. We're gonna go on to the next one, just like that, the next meeting, and it'll give folks more time to look at it, to review it, it's considerably more than we've had so far, so. Any other discussion around the VSRs before we adjourn? All right, hearing none then.
Before you adjourn, can you go to the next agenda, and I'll just make one quick comment on the OAs just to help you.
Sure, yeah. The discussion on operational expectations and results policies.
I mean, I'm assuming you're not gonna tackle them, right?
No, we're not going to.
Okay.
Not,
All right.
not
Yep.
today.
And I'm sure if you haven't got a chance, I apologize, I didn't get this, I had them done and then I wanted to make some revisions. So I just emailed it out earlier this week, so you may not have had a chance to see them, but when you do take a look at them, these are, these policies, because they are defining the guardrails, many of the policies will have options for you to consider. All of the options still fall within a coherent governance model, but some of them are a little further this way and some of them are a little further this way. So as a board, those are some of the things you're gonna have to decide is where are the guardrails with some of these things? How involved does the board want to be? How hands-off does the board want to be? And then through some of the scenarios, I think some of it will just be, we'll just have to talk through them, but just know that, when it says like in OE1, there are three options. We're gonna pick one of them or some sort of hybrid of them. And I'm kind of where in the spectrum you want to be. That's all I need.
Within that spectrum, we're representing the community. So I'm just a little bit like that's what's coming up for me right now. I could say, well, I want it to be here, but if the general population in our community wants it to be here, how do I know that?
Well, I don't know if I can entirely answer that, but I think generally speaking, board members are not on a board to act individually. They're on a board to represent 1/7 of the population in reality. And some of you are 1/7 of an at-large, right? And some of you are representing a specific area, city, or whatever. But even those, everybody in our district votes on every board member. So you truly are representing 1/7 of the population. So if you think that 1/7 of the population feels that way and you want to represent that, that's really how votes should end up being, right? And if everybody thinks that that's a big thing, then the vote will naturally fall in that direction. But I think it's obviously, everybody has personal thoughts and opinions, but I think you gotta put personal thoughts and opinions aside and remember, all board members remember that they're representing the public, right? And their job is to do what's best for the public school as a representation of the public stakeholders. And I know you know that. I'm just saying.
No, and that's why I brought it up. You know, that's what makes me a little like, you know, I'm not sure that my opinion would be in alignment or even in alignment at all with a lot of the community. And so and that's on me, like, you know, I need to get out there more and understand the community better. And I'm wondering if some of the information that you're getting with the group will help inform levels of tolerance, you know, that the community has over governing. And we have examples, of course, in the past that we can draw from. Also that we can, you know, like, okay, we know that didn't go so well, right? You know, what really flares people up in our community and what doesn't. And I don't have as much experience in the community as you. I think that's going to be really important that we have these conversations. I can bring a more global perspective than I can a very immediate local perspective.
Okay, so, Steve, so under those models, those options 1, 2, and 3, is it possible to kind of, you know, present a situation and how those approaches would vary? I mean, what do those approaches have that are unique to them? You know, what are we focusing on that there would be substantial differences or maybe minute differences in the way that these options are carried out? I'm specifically talking about like the OE1, the treatment of students, and the different options that are available there.
Yeah, I think, and this will give you an opportunity to go through it one more time, but in kind of the guide that I've provided Mr. Ambihan in terms of the scenarios, kind of go through that scenario that you're talking about where there's options, trying to like, okay, this scenario, this is how that would affect that. This is how this would affect that. This is how that would affect it. At least that's my goal with it. I might not hit it spot on every time, but that's my hope, is that the scenarios can kind of help establish where the board wants to be, at least as it pertains to that. And then it might turn into a bigger discussion. Well, what about this? And well, maybe we need to be here, maybe we need to be here, but at least you'll get an idea of how it applies to a scenario. I think, is that what you're asking?
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, I think the format and how the GCs and the BSRs has is going to apply to that one, but I think it's going to be more interactive on a different level as far as strategizing on what options do we want, or do we want a hybrid? You know, it's going to be a different type of discussion for sure. This is kind of getting into the meat and potatoes of things.
I think it's fine to come, you know, prepared to the next governance meeting with your personal opinions that may or may not represent, and then talk through them, but then also have an open mind, which I know you all will, because it may shift as we start talking through things. Oh, I didn't think about that. What about this?
Yeah, I think it's important that we do bring ideas. Yeah, that's why there's 7 people.
We don't have any strength as one, but we have strength in numbers.
Good stuff. I appreciate you taking the time to do this. It's just really refreshing. Good, healthy conversations.
It's fun. All right, last call. Is there a motion to adjourn?
I'll make that motion.
Motion made by Mrs. Sharp. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Second, by Mr. Oxley, any discussion? Mr. Oxley?
Aye.
Aye. Aye.
I,
Thank you.
Jill,
Thanks,
if you
everyone.
wanna know what fires up the community, come to the county board meeting.
And then.
And you will soon
I watched one of those. and I
actually steal my
think-
joy. I did too.
Oh my
I watched part of it. And I was like,
We're still
okay.
live.
Oh, yeah.
That's
Thank you.
okay.
That doesn't matter.
No. No, we have